The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It wasn't the gentle kind that whispered on leaves. This was a relentless pounding that turned soil into black sludge and streams into raging brown rivers. Eli stood at the edge of the old crossing, boots sinking into the soaked earth. He had walked this trail hundreds of times before, but today the river before him was unrecognizable, swollen, thrashing, its voice a deep, furious roar. Water surged over the stones that once formed a safe path, sweeping whole branches downstream like twigs. Through the fog rising off the water, he spotted movement on the opposite bank. A massive black bear stood there, its fur plastered to its body by the rain. But it wasn't foraging, nor was it simply watching the flood. It paced along the edge, head low, ears flicking back in unease. Something about the way it moved, quick steps forward, abrupt stops, made Eli freeze. Lightning flared behind the trees, and for an instant, the bear's eyes caught the light, glinting like wet amber. The animal looked toward the torrent, then back toward the woods, then toward the torrent again, as if weighing a choice. Eli's first thought was to back away. A bear in this weather could be unpredictable. But something kept him rooted, a sense that the bear wasn't a threat, at least not in this moment. Then, without warning, the bear stepped forward, front paws sinking into the churning shallows. The current grabbed at its legs, spray lashing its face. Still, it moved deeper. Eli's pulse hammered. Why would a bear risk its life in water like that? And what, in the chaos of that river, could possibly be worth it? The answer, he would soon learn, was nothing he expected. The bear's muscles bunched beneath its rain-slick fur as it plunged deeper into the roaring water. The current slammed against it with a force that would have swept any man off his feet, but the animal held low, bracing with each step, claws digging into submerged stones. Eli found himself leaning forward, breath shallow. Every instinct told him to get out of sight. A wild bear this close could be deadly, yet something about the way it moved pulled him in. This wasn't the reckless dash of a predator in pursuit. It was deliberate. Urgent. A flash of color appeared in the foam, red, small, and moving fast. Eli blinked, straining to see through the sheets of rain. It wasn't a fish, and it wasn't debris. The bear lunged sideways, jaws snapping just above the water's surface. For a heartbeat, Eli thought it had come up empty. Then he saw it, a tiny bundle of sodden fur dangling from the bear's mouth, legs limp, tail plastered to its body. A puppy. The current surged again, nearly taking the bear off balance, but it turned, shielding the small creature against its chest. Every step back to shore was a fight, water clawing at them both. Eli's throat tightened. He didn't know whose dog it was or how it had ended up in the river, but he knew one thing: without the bear, it wouldn't have lasted another minute. The bear hauled itself onto the bank, sides heaving, paws sinking into the mud. The puppy shivered weakly, its head lolling against the thick black fur that had saved it. For a long moment, the two just stood there, framed by rain and mist, predator and prey, bound by something older than fear. Then the bear lifted its head and stared straight at Eli. Not with a warning. With intent. Eli's boots sank into the mud as the bear turned away, the puppy still tucked carefully in its jaws. The downpour hadn't let up. It was as if the whole forest was trying to wash itself clean, erasing footprints, washing away trails. He knew following was dangerous. Every survival instinct screamed at him to keep his distance, not just for his safety, but because one wrong move might spook the bear into dropping its fragile rescue. But something in the animal's gaze back at the river had hooked him. It hadn't been aggression. It had been a request. The bear moved quickly, slipping through gaps in the undergrowth like it had traveled this route 100 times. Eli pushed after it, branches whipping his arms, wet leaves slapping against his face. His breath came hard, his legs burning with the effort. At one point, the bear disappeared entirely into the curtain of rain. Panic knifed through him, and he hurried forward, only to catch sight of its dark bulk again, climbing a slope toward the higher ground where the floodwaters wouldn't reach. The climb was brutal. The mud clung to his boots, turning each step into a fight. His fingers grasped at roots for balance, the cold biting through his soaked jacket. Twice he slipped, sliding back down before clawing his way up again. Somewhere ahead, the bear stopped. Eli froze behind a cluster of ferns, chest heaving. The bear set the puppy down in a patch of dry moss beneath a leaning cedar, licking its tiny head with slow, careful strokes. Eli felt something twist deep in his chest. This wasn't the savage predator he'd been warned about his whole life. This was something else entirely, A creature fighting against the storm, just like him. And now he had a choice: turn back to safety, or see this rescue through. The rain eased to a thin mist as Eli followed the bear into a stand of towering pines. Their trunks rose like ancient pillars, needles whispering softly overhead. The forest floor here was spongy with moss, the sound of rushing water fading behind them. The bear moved with purpose, the puppy once again cradled in its jaws. Eli kept his distance, stepping carefully to avoid snapping twigs. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar, the kind of scent that felt almost protective, wrapping around him like a blanket. Ahead, half hidden between two fallen logs, was a small hollow. It looked like a den, roofed by woven branches and padded with dry leaves, far too structured to be random. Eli's breath caught. Could the bear have built this? Or had it claimed something abandoned? The bear padded inside and set the puppy gently on the leaves. The little creature whimpered once, curling into a tight ball. Without hesitation, the bear nosed more moss toward it, tucking the edges like a parent pulling a blanket over a sleeping child. Eli crouched at the tree line, watching. Every movement was deliberate, almost human in its tenderness. This wasn't instinct alone, this was care. A gust of wind swept through the pines, rattling branches, and Eli realized the storm hadn't fully passed. Dark clouds still loomed beyond the treetops. He knew he should leave now, before night closed in. But something about the scene rooted him to the spot. The bear turned its head, eyes locking on his. Not a warning, more of an acknowledgement. They were sharing this moment, neither predator nor prey, just two beings who had come too far to turn away. Eli stayed in the shelter of the pines, listening to the rain fade into silence, knowing the real journey hadn't even begun. Night fell like a curtain, and with it came a cold that seeped into Eli's bones. The pines swayed in the wind, their shadows flickering under a moon veiled by storm clouds. Eli huddled against a tree just outside the hollow, knees drawn up, watching the bear inside with the puppy. Every so often, the bear would shift, its massive body blocking the wind from reaching the tiny bundle of fur. Eli could hear the puppy's faint breathing, a fragile rhythm that somehow kept him awake. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The reply was silence, no other movement, no other life. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Eli's mind kept circling back to the question that had gnawed at him since the river: why was the bear doing this? Instinct could explain protecting its own cub, maybe even defending food, but this? This was something else entirely. It felt like the bear understood what the puppy needed, and was willing to give it, even at its own risk. The temperature dropped further, and Eli's teeth began to chatter. He considered starting a fire but feared the light and smell might drive the bear away. Instead, he rubbed his hands together, tucking them under his jacket, eyes never leaving the hollow. Hours passed. The bear didn't sleep deeply, its head lifting at the faintest sound, ears twitching toward every rustle. Eli realized he was doing the same, keeping watch over the little creature between them as if they shared the responsibility. At one point, the bear's eyes caught the dim moonlight and flicked toward him. They lingered, calm but unblinking, and Eli felt an odd sense of permission. As though, for this night at least, they were on the same side. When dawn finally began to stain the horizon with pale light, Eli knew the night had changed him. He hadn't just survived beside a wild predator, he'd trusted it. And it had trusted him back. The first rays of sunlight spilled through the pines, melting the frost from the needles and painting the hollow in gold. The bear stirred, stretching its heavy limbs before gently nudging the puppy with its muzzle. The little creature blinked, weak but alive, and let out a soft whimper. Eli rose slowly, his legs stiff from the long night. He half expected the bear to retreat into the deeper forest now that the danger had passed, but it didn't. Instead, it stepped aside, leaving the puppy exposed to the morning light, as if offering it over. Eli crouched, carefully scooping the trembling bundle into his arms. The warmth was faint but steady, the heartbeat fragile yet persistent. He looked up to thank the bear, a foolish thought maybe, but the animal's gaze met his, deep and unhurried. In that moment, Eli thought of the river. Of how it had taken so much from him years ago, his father, swept away in a flash flood, and the trust he once had in the wilderness. But here, in the quiet dawn, the forest had given something back. Not just a life saved, but the reminder that it could still be a place of mercy, not just loss. The bear turned without sound, moving between the pines until its dark shape melted into the shadows. It didn't look back. Eli stood there for a long time, the the puppy tucked against his chest, listening to the wind in the branches. He knew the bear was gone, but its presence lingered, a silent reminder of what they had shared in the cold and dark. As he started the long walk toward the ranger station, Eli realized that the river had taken what it could. But the forest, in its own quiet way, had given him more than he dared hope. And somewhere out there, a bear walked alone, carrying the same unspoken truth.